first we will recite, Om Asatoma Sadgamaya. Then from the Dhyana Shlokas, Shloka 3, 4, 5 and 8. 3, 4, 5 and 8 from the Gita. But first from the Upanishad. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Prapanna Shanti. What did you chant? Okay. Om Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Gnana Mudraya Krishnaya Gita Amrita Duhe Namaha. Sarvopanishado Gavo Dogdha Gopalanandana Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdham Gitamritam Mahat Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. First we will explore the meaning of these Shanti mantra. The first one, Asato Ma Sadgamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritangamaya. These are from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. They are also called Abhyaroha mantras. The mantras which every human being desires, whether they are expressed or not expressed. What is the meaning? Asat. Asataha mam sat gamaya. Gamaya means make me attain, make me reach. Reach from what? Asat. Asat means unreal. From the unreal to the real. Now what is real and what is unreal? What is real is called Satyam or truth. The word Satyam has come from the root Sat. God's name is Sat. Sat, Chit, Ananda. So let me be. What does this word Sat means? The root meaning of this root. Word meaning of this root Sat means to be, to exist, not to become non-existence. So from the unreal, take me to the real. Why should this prayer be there? Because we are living in the world of real or unreal. So what is the definition of reality? Satyam. Reality and Satyam, truth, is synonymous. What is truth? That which is always and never changes is called truth. Trikala abadhitam satyam. Trikala abadhitam satyam. That which is never changed in the past, in the present or in the future. That is called satyam. That is called sat. That is called existence, pure existence. So everything we experience in this world is limited by time. You see, this table wasn't there, say 50 years back as an example. It is there now, but after some time it won't be there. we are born at some time, we live for some time, and then we pass away. So we are bound by what? Time. So this prayer is, let me go beyond time. That means, let me be for all time, for eternity. Let me become eternal, immortal. That is the meaning. Tamas means darkness. Darkness stands for what? Knowledge. Ignorance. Darkness means ignorance. So if there is darkness, we can't see anything. If there is light, we can see everything. So what does it mean that I can't see and I can see? Previously, I did not know things were here, and now I know things are there. That means previously I didn't have knowledge, now I have knowledge. This is a prayer saying, lead me from ignorance to knowledge, illumination. So what is the difference between knowledge and illumination? We use the word illumination. The difference is, knowledge means knowledge of the world, psychological knowledge, intellectual knowledge, scientific knowledge. Illumination means only one, to know who I am. The last is, Mrityorma Amritangamaya, from death, lead me to immortality. Here, Mrityu means what? Usually Mrityu means what? Death. Here Mrityu means unhappiness. So, our so-called happiness from Vedantic terminology is known as unhappiness. Our so-called highest happiness from Vedantic point of view is called Mahadukha, great unhappiness. If it is small happiness, it is small unhappiness. If it is biggest happiness, it is the biggest unhappiness. And why is it so? Why is it so? Because just one simple question. Supposing you enjoy a thing which gives you this happiness, what would be your attachment to that object?
That much.
This much. Suppose you enjoyed heavenly happiness, what would be your attachment?
Heavenly attachment.
Heavenly attachment means what? Maha Maya. Maha Maya. That is why humorously, funnily it is said, Mahamaya never touches an ordinary man. Only ordinary Maya touches an ordinary man. Only a person who is striving for God realization, Mahamaya touches him only, because she has to release him from the highest bondage. So from the viewpoint of Ananda, any type of happiness is very small. Why is it very small? Because it comes in time and it also disappears in time. That is the reason. So this is a beautiful prayer. Even an atheist can say this one, "Oh Lord, lead me from the unreal to the real. Lead me from ignorance to illumination. Lead me from unhappiness to unhappiness and happiness to Ananda." There is no translation for the word Ananda. Ananda is not happiness. Ananda is, you can say in a way, unending happiness. So as we go along, we will discuss these points in greater detail. Now, for these, how many? 5. So this is all to tell about the Gita and also to pray to Lord Krishna. Prapanna Parijataya. I will give simple explanations now. Later on, we will go into details. So this is about Sri Krishna. So what is it? Prapanna Parijataya. For those who take refuge in Lord Krishna, he becomes like a wish-fulfilling tree. Parijata means there is a tree called Parijata, in heavens, and whatever a man wishes, those wishes come true. That tree is called Parijata. In common parlance, it is called Kalpa Vriksha or Kalpa Taru. Kalpa Taru. Taru means a tree. Kalpa means whatever wishes you have, it will fulfill. So the Lord fulfills. Totra Vetraika Panaye. He has got a small stick in his hand. Why? Because he has to drive the chariot, horses. He has got a stick. So just like you have got a brake, you can say it is like a brake. And a wheel and a brake combined is called Totra Vetra. So why? Because you want your car to go this way or that way, then wheel is necessary. And when it is going very fast, some places you will have to put a brake. So the Lord has got to control those horses. What are those horses? Our sense organs, our mind. So Krishna, who is endowed with this controlling stick, Gnana Mudraya. Always this is called Gnana Mudra. You see, there are so many mudras. When you witness Bharatanatyam, you will see so many mudras. When you land in Indira Gandhi International Airport, you will see the walls are full of what? Mudras. Huge mudras. Have anybody seen? Full of mudras. Anyway, this particular way of putting, this is called Gnana Mudra, means a posture of knowledge. Gnana Mudra. Why this one? Some of you know, I have explained. Some of you know and have forgotten, and some of you do not know. So I am explaining to you. This symbolically is compared to Paramatma or the Divine Supreme Lord. This finger, this is called index finger. I'll say you, like that, you know, always I point. This is representative of each one of us, Jivatma. These three, Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira and Karana Sharira, gross body, subtle body and causal body. Now the Jiva has become very friendly, what we call that he has become a samsari with these three. Samsari means, you understand, a bound person. So who is a bound person? When the Paramatma identifies himself with gross body, subtle body and causal body, he is called a bound person. Association with any body is called bondage. And all these three are inseparable. So, like one man marrying three wives. So he is suffering. Okay, now what happens? Knowledge comes. When knowledge comes, he knows who he is. Then he says, all this is false friendship, and so he becomes friends with this. They become one. And then these three, talak, talak, talak. Divorce, divorce, divorce. But they can be there. But now there is no attachment. He knows I have nothing to do with them. So this, it is said, when a person realizes God, it will be like that. Many of the Indian saints, when they are sitting, etc., this is shown as. It is also called Chin Mudra. Chit is another name for Gnana. Sat and Chit, Chit, Chit Mudra, Chin Mudra. Sandhi rule is there. So what posture, hand posture, Krishna is having? Gnana Mudraya. And who is he? Krishna. He is Krishna. To such a Krishna, Gita Amrita Duhe Namaha. One who is constantly milking the cows called Upanishads or Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is called the milk of cows. Why milk? All the Upanishads are the cows, and he who milks all the Upanishads, he is called Krishna. And what is that milk? Bhagavad Gitas. The shlokas of the Bhagavad Gita is called the milk. And who is the drinker? Or in Indian terminology, when a cow is to be milked, the calf is let out. It is a starter machine. As soon as the mother starts giving milk, and this fellow is taken away, and man. So Krishna needs a calf. And who is that calf? Partha. Partho Vatsaha. Arjuna. Through Arjuna, but the whole milk belongs to whom? He is elevating himself. To whom? Sudhihi bhoktaha. Who are the enjoyers? They who have got sudhihi. Excellent mind, pure mind, spiritual mind, only they will enjoy. Not everybody. Yeah. So, Gita Amrita Duhe Namaha. The next verse, verse 4, Sarvopanishado Gavo. We already discussed. What is this Gita? It is the milk. Milk, milked from, obtained from Sarva Upanishad, all the Upanishads. And all the Upanishads are telling different things? No. All the Upanishads tell only one thing. What is it? Who are you? Who am I? Dogdha Gopalanandana. Gopalanandana means another epithet of Krishna. Dogdha, the milker. Who is the milker? Krishna. And who is the calf? Partho Vatsaha. Partha means Arjuna, another name. Sudhihi Bhokta. And who is the enjoyer of this milk? Everybody cannot enjoy milk. So many people are allergic to milk. Yeah. So, Sudhihi, those who have got discriminative mind. Sudhihi means discriminative mind. What is discrimination? The type of life I am leading is not right. Now I understand this is the type of life I should lead. Such a person who has got that discriminative wisdom, he is called Sudhihi. Well, a wise and discriminative mind. And what is this milk? Gita Amrita Mahat. It is Mahat means by drinking this milk, a person becomes Mahat, greatest. Who is the greatest? God is the greatest. And what makes a person greatest or God? By drinking this milk. This is not ordinary milk. An ordinary milk, it only strengthens a person. But this milk called Bhagavad Gita, it makes a person the greatest in this world. Gita Amritam Mahat. It is Amritam. You know what is Amrita? In Bhagavatam, there is the legend of what is called Samudra Manthana, churning the ocean. Very, very symbolic story. Anyway, what is the ocean? Our mind. Who have to churn? Both our minds, our thoughts have to churn. For what purpose? To obtain Amrita. Amrita means what? Immortality. So we are mortals. By drinking this milk, we become immortal. So, does the body become immortal? No. Does the mind become immortal? No. What becomes the immortal? It is the soul. So, even to say the soul becomes immortal, technically is not correct. Previously also it was immortal only, now also it is immortal, but somehow it came to think that I am not immortal. By drinking this milk, that intoxication, that poison has gone. So I realize, oh, I am immortal all the time. Then the next fifth verse is Vasudeva Sutam Deva. Who is Krishna? He is the Sutam, son. Vasudeva's son. Kamsa Chanura Mardana. Kamsa Chanura Mardana. He who overcame, defeated, whom? Kamsa and Chanura. You know the legend? Kamsa was the king who imprisoned Krishna's parents. And Chanura was the boxer who Kamsa thought that he will kill both Krishna and Balarama. So Mustika and Chanura he employed two gundas, mafias. But unfortunately they got killed. Kamsa also got killed. Devaki Paramanandam. So he is the greatest joy of whom? Devaki. Because Devaki is his mother. And a mother becomes, what is the greatest happiness of a mother? Her child. When she sees her child victorious, oh, how happy she is. Paramanandam. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. I salute Krishna, who is the teacher of not only one Arjuna, but Jagadgurum, the whole universe. Why is it? Because the whole universe is whom does the world really salute? Whom do we salute? Whoever helps me, we salute, isn't it? If somebody helps me, then I salute. What is help? What is the meaning of help? Help means he who gives me happiness is the great, isn't it? Somebody gives you sweet and you say, you helped me. How did he help you? By eating sweet, what do you get? Happiness. So, who can help the whole world? Can you help the whole world? You can't even help yourself. Who can help the whole world? Only God can help. That is what is indicated here. The whole universe salutes him. The Guru. Guru means he who shows the right way, he who leads a disciple from darkness to light. Now, the same word is also used in Swami Vivekananda in Avatara Stotram. Khandana Bhava Bandhana. What is the next word? Jaga Vandana. That means Sri Ramakrishna or Avatara is saluted by the whole world because his teachings can take anybody out of this small happiness to eternal infinite happiness. I salute such a Guru. What is the next verse, 8th verse is telling about the greatness of Kripa. Kripa means grace of God. What does grace of God do? And again, it is grace of God because I may be gracious. I can help somebody. My grace, first of all, is small, little, second, for a short time, for a few persons. But God's grace is, it is infinite, eternal, unending. So see, mukam karoti vachalam. A person who is dumb, he can make that person, vachala means talkative. So eloquent. Here it is not talkative means it's a derogatory term. But here it means he is mahat, very great. So the God's grace can make even a dumb person the most eloquent person. Example is Kalidasa. Kali is grace. That's why Kalidasa means, Dasa means a servant. Kali is servant. He was supposed to be a most idiotic, foolish person. But by her grace, in 1 millisecond, he became one of the world's greatest poets. Since that time, he acquired the name Kali Dasa. Mukam karoti vachalam, whose grace makes the dumb also very eloquent. Pangum langhayate girim. And by God's grace, even a lame person can cross over the greatest mountains. What it means? What does it mean? We are all like lame people. And we are swimming or trying to climb the mountain of samsara. But by God's grace, in a twinkling of an eye, He can take us to the highest peak. Pangum langhayate, he whose grace makes a lame person reach the highest peaks of a mountain. Yat kripa, whose grace, aham vande, I salute I recognize that this is the grace. What I am today is the grace of God. And what type of this God is? Paramananda Madhavam. Madhavam means Ma is another name for Lakshmi. That's why he is called Madhava. Madhava means master or husband, husband of Lakshmi. That means he is the print master of minting money. He is the Lord of Mother Lakshmi. What type of Lakshmi? Paramananda Madhavam, the highest joy. This word Paramananda has come earlier also. So this is what part of a few shlokas I selected. Later on we will go through the dhyana shlokas when we advance a little. This I selected because we wanted to learn how to chant. So that is all the purpose. So let us chant this fifth one so that we know the how it is chanted. Vasudeva sutam devam kamsa chanuramardanam devaki paramanandam krishnam vande jagadgurum. In our last class, I have given you a bird's eye view of the Bhagavad Gita. So I hope you have revised it. I am not going into it, but I will continue from where we left off. We are going to study Bhagavad Gita. What is the meaning of Gita? There are so many. How many Gitas are there? Do you know how many Gitas are there? There, so far as I know, at least there are more than 25 Gitas are there. So, okay, Bhagavad Gita is one, Gopi Gita is one, Hamsa Gita is one, Ribhu Gita is one, Anu Gita is one, Avadhuta Gita is one, Ashtavakra Gita is one, Hamsa Gita is another. So in Bengali, they printed one small booklet all about this Guru Gita. There is one Guru Gita is also there. They are all printed, about 20-25 Gitas. They all collected together and printed. So this is called Bhagavad Gita. What is the meaning of Gita? Gita means, the Sanskrit word Gita means the English word song. Gita means song. Why is it a song? Because if somebody tells you something which it may be wonderful, but very harshly, we don't appreciate it. But if the same thing is told in a musical way, then it goes inside very, very nicely. That even weeping also like that. So, if you want to weep, you will make everybody weep. But weep with Mohan Raga or Shivaranjani Raga. You know, special ragas in Indian musical composition, weep like that. Everybody will clap you. Ah, what wonderful. Tears will come to their eyes. So Gita means a song. Why is it a song? It is so pleasant. And what type of Gita? Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita means a song that came from the mouth of the Lord. Why is it very important? The song that comes from us, however it is, suppose somebody, as an example, somebody sings, Aham Brahmasmi, a very song. There is a beautiful song composed by Sadashiva Brahmendra. You might have heard me singing long past, or Uma recently said, Khelati Brahmande Bhagavan, Khelati Brahmande Hamsa Soham, like that it goes. I am Hamsa, Hamsa Soham, Hamsa Soham, Soham Hamsa. I am that, I am that, I am that, I am he, I am he. That is called Hamsa. We know what is Hamsa? Reverse Hamsa, Soham. It comes, Soham means what? Saha Aham. I am he is me. This is called Hamsa Gita. That is why Paramahamsa. The title Paramahamsa comes from that. Just like a Hamsa can separate the milk from water. So a realized soul knows this is God, this is Maya, this is truth, this is untruth, this is real, this is unreal. This mixture he can separate. Okay. Literally, there are hundreds of, I would say thousands of commentaries on Bhagavad Gita. Literally, not metaphorically, literally. And one of the greatest of these commentaries is by Sri Ramakrishna. Shortest, greatest. What is the shortest? You all know. You repeat the word Gita many times, and in course of time Gita becomes Tagi. Gita, 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 Gita. What does Tagi means? Renounce. Oh man, renounce. Renounce what? Renounce not home, renounce not clothes, renounce your position, renounce all this. That doesn't make any sense. What is the only thing to renounce is renounce Maya, renounce ignorance. So give up what doesn't belong to you and remain in your own self. Give up what you are not. So we are now thinking, what is our CV? I am so and so. What do you mean by that? I am so and so? Body and intellectual mind, I am BA, I am MA, etc. Yeah. So Tyaga means give up. So Sri Ramakrishna's commentary is most wonderful. And what does this Tyaga really mean? Of course, we will discuss during the our Gita classes. But in essence, what it means is give up unreality, and that's our prayer. What is our prayer? Asatoma Sadgamaya. This is the prayer of not only believers, also everybody. Because who wants to die? Death is the most fearful thing in this world. So we think. But according to Gita, there is no death. Death is only an appearance. Really, there is no death. According to science also, there is no death. Can you understand that? See, when we are talking about death, did you ever think about the death of the mind? Did you ever refer that my mind is dying? We don't say that, even though it is happening. When you change your mind, what happened to the old mind? It's gone. We are talking about the body. But the greatest delusion is, when is the body in the same condition? How long is the body in the same condition? Now when we start looking at the grey, what is called hair, grey hair, then we say, oh, slowly I am becoming old. Then remove the grey hair. Now I am young again. This body has started dying from the moment it has come into existence. Changing all the time, is it not? But we don't consider it as death. We consider it as growth. But we consider only one type of death. When this body, it falls, what we call life departs, the consciousness departs, that is when we say this body is dead. Okay. But according to science, this body is made up of what? Matter. So I'll give you one small example, you take this table. Now what is it? This is a table, and you break it into pieces. So what happened? Table died, but really did it die? So now it is manifesting in the form of pieces of wood. Now you put them into fire, and what do they turn into? Ashes. This much we can understand. But you can also change the ashes into something else, by some other process. whatever you do, what does it do? It only changes its form, but there is no non-existence. That is why one of the best verses in Bhagavad Gita in the second chapter says, Nasato vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate satah. So for reality, it never becomes non-existent, and the unreality never came into existence. Then what do we mean by death? Change of form. Unrecognizable change, if it happens to any object, that is what we call death. If it is recognizable change, we don't call it death. A young man becomes old. What is the change? Recognizable change. Why is it called recognizable change? Suppose you have a friend, say 20 years back. After 30 years back, you meet that person. Meanwhile, you never had any correspondence. Oh, are you not the same? This is called recognizable change. But when a person is put in the crematorium, then the ashes come out, what happens? Non-recognizable change. It is only change, but it is never total non-existence. So death is only considered manifestation and non-manifestation. We will discuss these points later. So this Gita, Bhagavad Gita, for Hinduism or Vedanta, is one of the three primary foundational scriptures. Hinduism has got three foundational scriptures. It is called Prasthana Traya. Traya means three. Triambakam yajamahe, like that. Traya. Actually, the English word three comes from this word traya. Yeah. Okay. What are the other two? Upanishads, Brahma Sutras, and Bhagavad Gita. So these are called prasthanas, three prasthanas. What is prasthana? That which takes us to the highest goal is called prasthana. Prakrishta sthana. You understand sthana? Those who are Indians, they understand what is called sthana. Sthana means a place. Prasthana means the highest place. And that which takes us to the highest place is called prasthana. And what is the highest place? God, our own home. So, Upanishads, you all know. Brahma Sutras, some of you know. What is Brahma Sutras? It is a special work composed by Vedavyasa to reconcile the so-called seemingly apparently contradictory statements we find in the Upanishads. So, if we do not know the Upanishads, we will not understand Brahma Sutra. Brahma Sutras, the very name, Sutra means that which points. What does it point to? It is there. Brahma Sutra. Brahman. If you follow this way, you reach Brahman. So that is called Brahma Sutras. That which Sutra also means aphorism, but it means that which points out. That is called Sutras. So there are three types of prasthana. One is called Shruti Prasthana, another is called Nyaya Prasthana, another is called Smriti Prasthana. Shruti Prasthana. Upanishads are called Shruti. And Brahma Sutras is called Nyaya. Nyaya means logic. So it all uses logic only. So why this thing is like this? Through reason, through logic, it wants to convince us what is the truth. And this is called Smriti Prasthana. Smriti means memory. What is memory? Secondary scripture. What is secondary scripture? Memory is always Smriti. That is why the word for that proper translation is recognized scriptures. Recognized. If you use the word recognize, we are referring, first experience is called cognize. Thereafter, whenever we come back to that point, somebody reminds us, we are reminded, then it is called recognition. So first time when a person had experience of God, it is called Shruti. Thereafterwards, somebody hears it. Shruti means heard. That means the disciple hears it from the Guru. I had this experience. We are reading Gospel. That means what? Sri Ramakrishna says, I had this experience. And then we are hearing it. And then we take it on faith. And then we try to understand. And then we try to explain. That is called Smriti. That is why Smriti Pradhana is called Bhagavad Gita. Why? It is based upon Upanishads. That is why it is called Smriti Prasthana, foundational scripture, but based upon the Shruti, and equally important. In fact, it is even more important than the Upanishads. Why? Because the language of the Upanishads and certain of these meditations that are posited in the Upanishads is very hard to understand, whereas this Bhagavad Gita deals with our day-to-day life. That is why same material presented so that we can all recognize it and use it in our day-to-day life. So, I also had mentioned during my talk on the Great Master, why does God incarnate? One of the purposes is reinterpretation of the scriptures. So that means what does he do? He doesn't change the truth because truth cannot be changed. But it can be presented in such a way that two conditions have to be taken into consideration. First, it must be made understandable to the present generation. Second, it must be made practical according to the present generation. This is what Bhagavad Gita does. It reconciles many of the so-called seemingly contradictory statements in the Upanishads, and it makes it eminently practical. And Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna himself says, this Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yoga Pavitramedam Uttamam Pratyakshavagamam is very easily practicable. Easily. But what Sri Krishna calls very easily practicable is a very difficult for most of us because we don't want to do it. When does a thing become difficult?
When you don't want to do it.
When we do not wish to do it, when we want the result of something but do not wish to work hard for it, then it becomes very difficult. Okay. So, like when we are discussing about the Great Master, we also discussed about if we want to study any scripture, 4 conditions have to be fulfilled. Anubandha Chatushtaya. What is it? First of all, Prayojana. What is the goal? What is the purpose? Second is Vishaya. What is the subject matter? Then, what is the connection between the subject matter and what we want to attain? And ultimately, who is the fit person? So, Bhagavad Gita itself tells that he who is not a devotee and who doesn't have faith in my words, for such people, one should not make these teachings available. Not because they are secret, this is because the person will not simply take it, and it is a waste of time. That is why Sri Ramakrishna's way of telling anadhikaris, go and see the buildings. So it is true. So that is the adhikari. Who is adhikari? Who is devotee, who is endowed with faith and who wants to follow, practice it and reach the goal. He alone is the fit person. What is the subject? Subject also we discussed it. What is the subject? Bhagavad Gita is teaching us what? How to be most happy. Eternally, infinitely happy. How do we become eternally, infinitely happy? By knowing who we are. This is the subject. And what is the relationship? Bhagavad Gita teaches nothing but self-knowledge. Who we are. Simple words. So these are the four things that we have. And Bhagavad Gita has got more or less 700 verses. And Bhagavad Gita starts with the word real dharma. It starts with the word dharma and it ends with the word dharma. Dharma, how does Bhagavad Gita start? Dharma kshetre kurukshetre. And then it ends in sarva dharman parityajya. So give up all other reliances, dependencies, just to rely upon me. It also starts with shoka and also starts with ashoka, ends with end of shoka. Arjuna's shoka. When does the real Bhagavad Gita starts? Real teaching of Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, 11th verse. Ashochyan anvashochastam. And in the end he says, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharan aham tva sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. Do not grieve. I will grant you liberation. So what is the purpose? This subject matter, we are suffering from misery, distress, unhappiness. What is the Bhagavad Gita teaches? It will take us out of distress. It gives us the greatest happiness. In Sanskrit, this is what is so beautifully expressed in two words. Dukkha nivrutti, paramananda prapti. Dukkha nivrutti, complete cessation of all miseries. Paramananda prapti, becoming one with the highest bliss. So that is what it is about. Now, Sri Ramakrishna's, what his commentary on the Gita we discussed. The next point is Bhagavad Gita can also be called the rules of the game called life. There are some books which give us the games of life. And one actually it is a title like that. There is one person. And then he brought out in another edition the enhanced rules of life, of the game of life. Life is a game. And there are certain rules. Every game has got to be played with certain rules. And what is Bhagavad Gita? It tells us how to live the life with the game called life with certain rules. So, what is the purpose of every game? When a person plays a game, what is the goal? Winning. So, what is here winning? The goal of this game is to become divine. So, from human to divine. That is why it is said, evolution takes place in three ways. From animal to man, from man to God. 3 steps. So, Dvaita to Visishtadvaita to Advaita. This is the one. And there is a Bhagavad Gita, whether historically it happened or not, we don't know. But allegorically, many people interpret. Swami Vivekananda also interpreted it allegorically. And you know what is an allegory? A small story which contains parallel meaning, higher meaning. Same allegory has got a higher meaning in life. Here the allegory is what? This is the image. That Arjuna was there sitting in the chariot. Krishna is the charioteer. He is sitting on the, both of them are sitting in a chariot, and this chariot is pulled by some horses. And where is this chariot? In a battlefield. This is the imagery presented. What is the allegory? The allegory is this whole world is a battlefield. Is a battle means there must be two opposing parties. Who are the opposing parties? So, good and bad, happiness and unhappiness, knowledge and ignorance. So, these are the opposing parties. And everybody wants only victory. Everybody. So, what is the goal now? To become victorious. And what is this chariot? Our body, mind is the chariot. And who is the person who is identified with the body, mind? Arjuna. Arjuna represents what? Each individual soul is an Arjuna. Supposed to be. Everybody is not Arjuna, because Arjuna means what? A hero. We don't even consider this world as a battlefield. Yeah. The moment you hear battlefield, then we get phobia. We go to sleep. Yeah. Our only victory at present seems to be to go to sleep. That is when we obtain the victory. Then as soon as you open, the battle is there, the fight is there, the war is there. Life is an unending war. What does Krishna represent? He represents wisdom. That is why he is called driver. If Krishna is the driver, then the victory is sure to come. So we will come to that point, because there is a verse in Bhagavad Gita. In fact, it is the last verse in the Bhagavad Gita. So what does it say?
Where Krishna is.
Yes, where Krishna is and where Arjuna is, where both of them are there. If one of them is there, it is useless. Then tatra srir vijayo bhutir dhruva nitir matir mama yatra yogeshwara krishna yatra partho dhanurdhara. This is the last verse in the tatra srihi vijayo bhutihi nitihi dhruva matir mama. It is the foregone conclusion where there is Krishna who is Yogeshwara, means if we are endowed with yoga. Yatra parthaha, where Arjuna is there, dhanurdharaha means unending, unceasing struggler. But struggle not like an animal, but struggle with the help of yoga. There, where there is a combination of divine wisdom and self-effort, God's grace and self-effort, there victory, success, prosperity, dharma, morality and spirituality, all these are their foregone conclusion. So what is the allegory of this? If we are like Arjuna and life is a battlefield and we have to fight against the evil forces, and evil forces must be not destroyed. You cannot destroy a force. Shakti cannot be destroyed. They can be converted into good forces, and ultimately these good forces take us to God. But it cannot be done unless there is a wise guide, and that guide is Sri Krishna, the Divine Lord, in the form of knowledge. That means where there is right knowledge, there ignorance will vanish. That is the allegory. We are all fighting in the world, there is no doubt about it. And when shall we get out of this? Only when we reach the goal. And that goal is to know. We are, call it moksha, call it mukti, call it liberation, call it what is called kingdom of heaven, whatever name you, Satori, Nirvana, whatever name you use. Okay. So, Bhagavad Gita teachings, where are they given? In a battlefield. Because it concerns how to fight. Life is a battlefield, good versus evil forces fighting it out. Ultimate victory belongs to the good. This battle must be fought with the shield of yoga. None can ever win this battle without the divine grace. Nobody can win. For this, Maya is divine and belongs to God. So, these evil forces belong to whom? The so-called evil forces belong to whom? It is to God. So, unless God is gracious and tells, this is my man. In Bengali there is a beautiful song. A devotee has composed this song. It says the Divine Mother, she gave the created creatures a mind. And then secret instructions. Whatever this fellow is doing, report it to me, karma phala. And then this person ultimately turns, oh mother, I am your child. Then the mother says, hey, this is my child, so don't do anything to him. You bring him to me because he is my child. So that is the ultimately surrender yourself to God. So grace and self-effort are two sides of the same coin. This is very important concept, grace and self-effort. So how does God grace comes? And what happens when God's grace comes? Very important for us to understand. God's grace doesn't give us immediate result. It first comes in the form of right understanding. God, when I have right understanding, I have to understand that God is very gracious. He has given me that capacity to understand what is right and what is wrong. That is the first effect of grace. The second effect of grace is, maybe I understand rightly, and most of us understand rightly, but we have no inclination to do it. So that inclination to do is also the grace of God. Hey, it is good for your own good. You will be happy. You will finish your duty very quickly and then return home. So that is what is the grace of God. And what is that grace? Yoga. With the help of yoga alone, one obtains God's grace and all veils are removed. So, how many yogas are there? We all know. Yoga. What is yoga? The word yoga has two meanings. One is a path, one is the goal. So that's why we call a yogi. Yogi means what? He who has reached the goal is called a yogi. But by what is concession, say karma yogi, means what? He is progressing towards God through the path of karma. So the secondary meaning of yoga is that which joins us with God is called yoga. That which unites us with God is called yoga. The real meaning is that yoga means the goal, yoga also means the path. How many paths are there? How many yogas are there? Four. Why four? Why four?
Four faculties of mind.
Yes, we discussed because every human being has got four faculties. What is they? Action, will, emotion, intellect. That is why there are four yogas. Not three, not five, but exactly four. And the another factor we have to recognize is, even though all of us have got all the four faculties, but all of us do not have all the faculties in the same degree. Some are more emotional, some are more action oriented, some have got tremendous willpower, and some have got more intellect. So whichever faculty is dominant in our life, and we can easily find out, we have to, that should be the path for us. So if we are emotional dominant, then what is the path? Bhakti. Emotion turned towards God is called devotion. Emotion turned towards the world is called samsara, worldliness. So the difference between worldliness and devotion is only the what is called object towards which we are using our emotions. As simple as that. So suppose somebody is not having emotion, then he will not be a devoted person. That is why some people are so cold. And cold persons usually become old very quickly. Yes, it is true, because he doesn't have joy. Happiness is also an emotion. In some people, intellect means they want to know, is it right? And is it logical? Is it rational? How can I understand it? How do I know this person is telling truth? How does this statement it can be relied upon? So some people, they want to know. Scientists, great scientists, etc. For such people, Jnana Marga we call it, path of knowledge. So some people, they don't have emotion much, they don't have intellect, but they have tremendous power of will. So you tell them, this is what you have to do, they will never leave it. For them, what is the marga? Dhyana marga, Raja Yoga. It is called Raja Yoga because they hold on to Guru's words and go on meditating, and they will also reach the same goal. Destination is one, but 4 different paths. Usually it is a mixture of 4. What is the last one? Some people are very active, and you ask them to worship God, they won't. Ask them to sit quiet and meditate, they won't. Ask them to analyze, they can't do it. But give them a hovering machine, jump up with joy and go along with that. Yeah. So for them, the Karma Yoga is important. What Sri Ramakrishna came to teach, what Gita also teaches, a judicious, harmonious combination of all the 4 yogas. That is what he says. So the goal is to become a yogi. So what is yoga? So yoga is to reach God. This is what each soul is potentially divine. We all came from God, and so our goal is to go back to God. One law, important law we discussed in our earlier classes. What is that law? What is called? This is called in Sanskrit Karana Karya Sambandha. Cause and effect. What is an effect? Is nothing but manifestation of the cause. That means if you see a mango tree, you can infer 100% correctly that it has come from the seed called mango seed. And if you see a mango seed, you know 100% it is not going to become any other tree excepting a mango tree. So you understand. So when a mango tree is going to die, where does it go back? Into its potential form. That is the law. Every object in this world goes back from the elements from which it originated. So that's why ice goes back to water. So all these bodies came from which source? Yes, Panchabhutas, but predominantly from the earth. Because this body is made up of food. Food comes from, therefore, when this body falls, where does it disintegrates? Disintegrates into what? Its cause. What is its cause? Food. It becomes food. Food means earth. So it goes back into earth. Earth originated from water. And water originated from fire. That's why when the fire of dukkha is burning in you, water comes out of automatically water comes out. So water came from fire. Fire came from air. Air came from space. We say space. Space came from God. So ultimately we all came from God. So we go back to God. That's what Swamiji means. Each soul is potentially divine means what? You came from God and you go back to God. Mano chalo nija nikethane. So there is a chapter in Bhagavad Gita. It's called 15th chapter. It is called Purushottama Yoga. Purushottama means Uttama Purusha. You have to put it backwards. Purusha Uttama means Uttama Purusha. So the very first verse is Urdhva Moola Madhashakam Ashwatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Sa Vedavid. So Urdhva Moolam, a tree comes from a root. So we also come from a root. Where is our root? Urdhva. Our root, we are rooted in God. We are rooted in Sat, we are rooted in Chit, we are rooted in Ananda. Therefore, when this tree goes back to its original state, where does it go? To God. That is why Sufi saying, beautiful saying, every Sufi has only 3 journeys. From God, in God, to God. We have never gone out of God. That is a beautiful concept. We will discuss during our talks there. And we also have defined 3 definitions of yoga. How do we know we are progressing spiritually? What are these 3 things? Samatvam means equanimity. Then karmasu kaushalam, dexterity in actions. The third is even if we are united with the greatest suffering and misery, we are floating in the ocean of bliss. Dukkha sanyoga viyogam yoga uchyate. Even though everything seems to be terrible, horrible, but the man is not at all affected. Why? Because he is rooted. He has become yoga rudha. He is rooted. Rudha means rudi. Rooted. The word root comes from the word rudha. Rudhi. Deeply rooted in yoga. Means what? Is never deviated from God. That is why Sri Ramakrishna's life, Holy Mother's life, Swamiji's life, they radiate only joy. Otherwise, who will listen to these teachings? Because when you go into their presence, you can see you are also lifted up temporarily. And that is why you understand what they are telling is true. Even in that presence, I am feeling so joyful. If I become like that, how joyful I would be. That is the idea. Okay, now what we want to really discuss. What is the speciality of the Bhagavad Gita? You see, every scripture has got some specialities. So Bhagavad Gita has got some specialities. What are these specialities? First of all, the first thing is each soul is divine. But who says that? Swami Vivekananda. And that is what Bhagavan Krishna is telling. You are not the body, you are not the mind, you are the soul. This whole second chapter is nothing but summarizing Swami Vivekananda's each soul. You are the self. You are not wet by water. You are not cut by the weapons. You are not burnt by the fire. So no weapons can ever hurt you. And then goes on explaining that if you are, then you are. If you are not, you are not. If you are, you can never become non-being. If you are a being, you can never become a non-being. And then all these things are temporary things. So that's a beautiful point we will discuss later on. First, each soul is divine. All have a right to God. None is excluded. Sri Krishna is not talking about Arjuna. He is not talking about an Indian. He is talking about every jiva, not only human beings. Even the lowest is, because even the table is nothing but part of God's existence. So one day it will become a great saint. It evolves. That is what scientists say. Non-organic, inorganic matter has become organic. What is organic? Endowed with life. And then slowly it evolved from one-celled creature, it evolved into two-celled, many-celled, then plants, then insects, then animals, then birds, and then ultimately human beings. So it is all an evolution of one matter, evolution. Science is confirming. Why I am telling? Because we have more faith in science than in the scripture, Shastra. Okay. So yoga is both the goal and also the means. Every yoga, in the beginning, it is the path. In the end, that is the goal. That is why Sri Ramakrishna is said, Jrumbhita Yuga Ishvara Jagadishvara Yoga Sahaya. He who helps any sincere soul, that is incarnation of God, Jesus or Buddha or whatever. And Shiva's epithets are there. He is called Yogeshwara and he is also called Yogishwara. Yogeshwara means he is the master of yoga. Yogishwara means he is the master of yogis. So that's why you say yogi, yogi Paramananda. That means yogi means what in what sense? He has reached the goal. That's why Paramahamsa established. Okay. So yoga is both the goal and also the means. And all the four yogas are harmonized. Bhagavad Gita speciality. What is the speciality? All the yogas are totally harmonized. That means what? No yoga is superior to any other yoga. And every yoga independently can take one to the same goal. Bhagavad Gita speciality. Distinction between the secular and spiritual is removed. That means a person can be a householder, a soldier, a doctor, a servant, anybody, or a monk, it doesn't, man, woman, doesn't matter. Everybody is equal in the eyes of God. Anybody can become spiritual and reach that goal. This is previously there was a lot of conflict between, and now Sri Krishna comes and says through any yoga, any path, any religion, one can reach me. Between the reconciliation between faith and reason, religion and science are reconciled. So there is history, big history is there, Catholic Church hanged several scientists, burnt some people. You can just imagine a great scientist discovers something, what is the reward? He is simply burned to death. Your Galileo, he was house arrested. And only now that was a mistake, we apologize. What good does it do to Galileo, who was house arrested? Kepler, Bruno, who was burnt, Kepler, who was outcasted. What good does it do? So Bhagavad Gita says you should not have any conflict between faith and reason. That means what? You can have faith, you can be also rational. There is no inherent conflict. In fact, faith unaccompanied by reason is bad, and reason without faith, it is also the relationship is between a lame man and a blind man. It is like that. So science is a lame person but blind. Faith is a blind person but lame. This is the relationship. Religion, science and art are three expressions of spirituality. Who said that? Swami Vivekananda's great utterance is religion, science and art are three expressions of spirituality. That means what? One can become great artist and also reach God. One can be a great scientist and also reach God. One can be a great religious person and also reach God, depending upon what they want. A religious person may want name and fame. A scientist may want to patent all his discoveries, inventions. Or an artist want to make a lot of money. No, if it is directed towards God, it reaches. Difference between all religions are obliterated. We will discuss these special points when it comes. But here I give a reference. Krishna says, whoever approaches me through any deity, through any path, they all reach me only. Why? Because the goal is only one. God is only, how many gods are there? Only one God is there. That is the idea. Sri Ramakrishna also in toto. You apply the same thing to Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, it will come there. All life is divine. This is a most wonderful idea. We have that mistaken idea, oh, I am a grihastha, I am not spiritual. No, all life is divine. In fact, It is the divinity which is manifesting in the form of a baby and a student, a married person, a retired person, a monk, a good person, a wicked person. Who is a wicked person? Can you say you don't belong to God? You are not in the world of God, you belong to some other world. Can you say that? Yeah. Christianity, it is God and Satan. All right. Who created Satan? Who is the father of Satan? Yeah. So it is a living. Realization of God is the main teaching of Bhagavad Gita. Without God, man is living dead. Where is said? Ishavasya Upanishad. Asurya namate loka andhena tamasavrata. A person without spiritual life is a very miserable person. So here is another definition of a spiritual life. So a person who is joyful is a spiritual person. And a person who is miserable is an unspiritual person. Wonderful idea. So can a wicked person be joyful?
No.
Not possible. It is called excitement. The distinction between excitement and real joy is like between heaven and earth. A person eats and he is excited. Nice food, spicy food, excited. Can you call it joy? No. That is an excitement, emotional excitement. He can have it. We can also have it. He can be a wicked person. He can be a good person. But true joy comes only from God. Why is it? Why is it? Because if you imagine God as a huge mountain, very, very tall, and it is a huge, like mountain, Himalayas, Everest peak. So the more the person is climbing, the more he is experiencing
Joy.
joy. Joy of
Climbing.
mountain, Everest joy of mountain. So that is the idea. The more we climb, the more we enjoy. What does that mean? That means if I am a wicked person, what am I doing? Am I climbing up or am I climbing down? You see the idea? Climbing down, going away from God, is called non-spiritual life. Climbing up is called spiritual life. Who gave this definition? Swamiji. You see, what is dharma? That which anything that takes us towards God is dharma. Anything that takes us away from God is adharma. And dharma is equated to joy or ananda. It is a climb from a lower ananda to higher ananda. That's what he says. When without God, man is living dead. When man learns to roll the sky as a mat, then only can he overcome all grief without knowing God. It is a verse from Shvetashvatara Upanishad. What is it telling? It looks a little bit difficult language. When man learns to roll the sky as a mat, as we roll a mat, a carpet, then only can he overcome all grief without knowing God. That means what? Man can overcome grief only when knowing God. With knowing God, he can overcome grief. Without knowing God, he cannot overcome grief. So without knowing God, when can a person overcome grief? When he learns how to roll the sky like a mat. That means, can you roll the sky like a mat? Just as it is impossible to roll the sky like a mat, without knowing God, it is impossible to become happy. This is the understanding that is given. Then, life is a school where we learn to evolve and manifest our innate divinity. These points again we will discuss in our next class. Inexorably, life is carrying us towards this goal, and Jivan Mukti, or living free, is the true goal of life. So these are few points and then we will enter into the first chapter. So please just to have a cursory glance of the first chapter. Very briefly, I'll give you today that why we are going. It is the first chapter is very wonderful title. What is the title? Arjuna Vishada Yoga. So Vishada Yoga. Vishada means intense misery. And intense misery can become the greatest yoga. That is why the first chapter, if there can be misery, but it need not be yoga. But misery also can become great yoga. It can, when it is Vishada or great misery is turned towards the world, we become more bound and more suffering. And when the same thing is turned towards God, then it becomes a means of reaching God. That is why Arjuna, who was so miserable, what did he do? He turned his face towards God, and that's why his very surrender has become a yoga, and he reached God because of that. So this is just a brief summary of what we are going to discuss, and these few points we will discuss in our next class, which will be 2 weeks hence. I don't remember what is the date. 23rd of April. April 16th we have the class on great minds. Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum.